Every story leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves.
The first story tonight is called The Window Watcher. This one was sent in by a listener who attended a sleepover at a friend's rural home. Something was outside that basement window, and it was a lot closer than he thought. The tapping on the window started around 2 in the morning, and at first I thought it was the branch of the oak tree outside. But there was no oak tree on that side of the house. This was the summer after 8th grade. My friend Derek had invited me and 2 other guys over for a sleepover at his family's house out in the country. His parents were home but asleep upstairs. We had the entire basement to ourselves, a half-finished room with wood-paneled walls, a concrete floor covered in old rugs, and one narrow window near the ceiling that looked out at ground level onto the backyard. Beyond the backyard was nothing, just dark fields and a tree line maybe 200 yards out. We'd been up playing video games and eating junk food, the usual stuff. Around midnight, the other 2 guys fell asleep in their sleeping bags. Derek crashed on the couch. I was still awake on the floor, scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A light tap 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 on the basement window. I looked up. The window was small, maybe 18 inches tall and 3 feet wide. There was no curtain on it. From where I was lying, I could see the glass, and beyond it just darkness. I told myself it was probably a bug or an animal. I went back to my phone. A few minutes later, it came again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 deliberate knocks, evenly spaced. I sat up this time and stared at the window. Nothing there, just the faint reflection of the basement light on the glass. I almost woke Derek up, but I felt stupid. It was probably nothing. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep. That's when the tapping changed. It became a slow, dragging sound, like a fingernail being pulled across the glass from one side to the other. I felt my whole body go cold. I lay completely still, staring at the ceiling, listening. The dragging stopped, then 3 more taps, then silence. I don't know what made me do it, but I got up and walked to the window. I had to stand on an old chair to reach it. I cupped my hands around my face and pressed against the glass to see outside. The backyard was lit just barely by a porch light on the side of the house. I could see the grass, the edge of the patio, and beyond that the dark field. There was a man standing in the yard, maybe 15 feet from the window, just standing there. He was facing the house. I couldn't make out his face because the light was behind him, but I could see his silhouette clearly. Average height, average build, completely still. His arms were at his sides. I stumbled off the chair and woke Derek up. I was whispering, trying not to panic. I told him someone was outside. He looked annoyed, but he got up and climbed on the chair to look. He stared out for a few seconds, then got down. He said nobody was there. I got back up and looked again. The yard was empty. The field was empty. Nothing. Derek told me I was seeing things and went back to sleep. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat with my back against the wall beneath the window and waited for morning. The tapping didn't come back. In the morning, Derek's dad was outside doing yard work. He called us out to look at something. There were footprints in the soft dirt of the garden bed that ran along the basement wall. They went right up to the window, and they didn't lead away in any direction. They just stopped, like whoever made them had been standing there for a long time, right against the glass, and then simply wasn't there anymore. Derek's dad assumed it was one of us messing around during the night. We all said it wasn't. He didn't push it, but I saw the look on his face when he measured those prints against his own shoe. They were significantly larger. I never slept over at Derek's house again. What gets me is the timing. When I saw that figure in the yard, he was 15 feet away, but the footprints were directly against the window, which means at some point during the night, he came back, and I was sitting right beneath that glass with my eyes closed, and he was inches away on the other side, and I never knew. And the next story gets a little more intense. It's called The Third Floor. This one takes place in an old house that only had 2 stories. So what was making those footsteps above the ceiling shouldn't have existed. I woke up to the sound of someone walking on the floor above us, which shouldn't have been possible because the house only had 2 stories. I was 15. My friend Haley was having a birthday sleepover at her grandmother's house, because it was bigger than her family's apartment. The house was old, built sometime in the 1920s, a tall Victorian on a dead-end street in a small Pennsylvania town. It had a musty, medicinal smell that I noticed the second I walked in. Faded floral wallpaper, dark hardwood floors that creaked with every step. Haley's grandmother was a small, quiet woman who stayed in her room on the first floor the entire night. There were 5 of us girls set up in the second-floor guest room. We stayed up late talking and doing each other's nails. Normal sleepover things. The house made noise constantly, settling sounds, the radiator clanking, pipes ticking in the walls. I got used to it. We all fell asleep around 1:30. I woke up sometime later. My phone was dead, so I didn't know the exact time. The room was dark, except for a nightlight plugged in near the door. Everyone else was asleep. And above me, through the ceiling, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, like someone pacing, heel to toe, crossing from one side of the room above us to the other. Then they'd stop. Then they'd come back the other direction. I lay there listening. The footsteps were heavy, not creaking house heavy, person heavy. I could track the exact path they were taking, back and forth, directly above where we were sleeping. I reached over and shook Haley awake. She was groggy and annoyed. I whispered that someone was walking around upstairs. She listened for a second and then said, "That's just the house, it does that." I told her, "No, listen, it's footsteps." She was quiet for a moment and then I saw her face change. She heard it too. She whispered that there was no upstairs. The second floor was the top floor. Above us was just the attic, and the attic didn't have a real floor. It was just rafters and insulation. Her grandmother never went up there. There wasn't even a real door to it, just a hatch in the hallway ceiling with a pull-down ladder, and it had been painted shut years ago. We both lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to those footsteps go back and forth. They were steady and rhythmic, almost mechanical, like whoever was up there wasn't going anywhere, just walking the same path over and over. Then they stopped, right above us, directly above us, and there was a long pause, and then a new sound, a slow creaking like weight shifting, like someone lowering themselves down. The ceiling above me made a sound I can only describe as a groan, like something was pressing on it from above. Haley grabbed my arm so hard it bruised. We both stared up. The ceiling was old plaster, slightly yellowed. In the dim glow of the nightlight, I thought I could see it bowing. Just slightly, like something heavy was resting on it from the other side. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. We lay frozen like that for what felt like 10 minutes. Then the pressure sound stopped. The footsteps didn't come back. We woke everyone else up and went downstairs. We spent the rest of the night in the living room with every light on. In the morning, Haley's grandmother asked why we'd all come downstairs. Haley told her about the footsteps. Her grandmother got very quiet. She didn't say it was the house settling. She didn't say we imagined it. She just said we should have slept on the first floor, like she already knew, like she'd always known something was up there. Haley told me later that her grandmother sold the house about 6 months after that. She never told Haley why. When the new owners did renovations, they pulled open the attic hatch. Haley heard this secondhand from a neighbor. She said the workers found the insulation in one section of the attic had been completely flattened, pressed down into a rough path, back and forth, from one end of the attic to the other, like something had been pacing up there for a very long time. No one ever found any way in or out of that attic other than the painted shut hatch. I still think about that ceiling bowing above my face. Whatever was up there knew we were below it, and it was trying to get closer. And this last story is the one that stuck with me the most out of these 3. It's called The Friend Who Wasn't There. I'll let the narrator explain. I need to be honest about something before I tell this story. I still don't fully understand what happened, and part of me doesn't want to. When I was 12, I was invited to a sleepover at my friend Narlan's house. There were 4 of us total. Me, Narlan, Jacob, and a kid named Marcus who I'd never met before. Narlan said Marcus went to his church. He was quiet, kind of pale, with dark hair that fell over his eyes. He smiled a lot but never really said much. I didn't think anything of it. Some kids are just shy. Narlan's house was a split level in a suburban neighborhood. His parents were upstairs. We were in the downstairs family room with sleeping bags spread across the carpet. The room had sliding glass doors that opened onto a back deck, and beyond the deck was a fenced yard that backed up to a strip of woods. The doors had vertical blinds that were mostly closed, but not completely. You could see thin slices of the dark yard between the slats. The night was normal at first. We played board games, watched a movie, ate pizza. Marcus sat with us the whole time. He laughed when we laughed. He played the games, but looking back, I realized something. I can't remember a single thing he said. Not one word. I remember him being there. I remember his face, but I cannot recall his voice. Around midnight, we turned off the lights and got into our sleeping bags. I was on the far side of the room, near the sliding doors. Marcus was next to me. Narlan and Jacob were on the other side. We talked in the dark for a while. At some point, I turned to say something to Marcus, and he was lying in his sleeping bag with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling, not blinking. I said his name and he didn't respond. I figured he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open. I'd heard some people do that. I rolled over and eventually fell asleep. I woke up later in the night because I was cold. The sliding glass door was open about 6 inches. The vertical blinds were swaying gently in a breeze coming from outside. I could feel the night air on my face. I sat up confused. I looked over at Marcus's sleeping bag. It was empty, not just like he'd gotten up to use the bathroom. The sleeping bag was flat, completely flat, like nobody had ever been in it, and it was unzipped all the way, spread open like it had been laid out but never used. I looked toward the open sliding door. Through the gap, I could see the back deck and part of the yard. There was a shape at the far end of the yard, near the fence line where the trees started. It was too dark to see clearly, but it looked like a person standing just inside the tree line. Small, kid-sized. I don't know why I didn't wake the others. I think I was in that half-asleep state where nothing feels fully real. I stared at the shape for a long time. Then I reached over and slid the door closed and locked it. I pulled my sleeping bag over my head and eventually fell back asleep. In the morning, I woke up to Narlan and Jacob already eating cereal in the kitchen. I went upstairs and asked where Marcus was. Narlan looked at me confused. He said, "Marcus who?" I said, "Marcus, from your church, the kid who was here last night." Narlan said it was just the 3 of us. It was always just the 3 of us. He'd only invited me and Jacob. I looked at Jacob. Jacob shrugged and said he didn't know any Marcus. I described him, the pale skin, the dark hair, the way he smiled. They both looked at me like I was losing it. I went back downstairs to the family room. There were 3 sleeping bags on the floor. Only 3. Mine, Narlan's, and Jacob's. There was no 4th sleeping bag. No sign that a 4th person had ever been there. I told myself I'd dreamed the whole thing. I almost convinced myself. But when I got home that afternoon, I found something that I have never been able to explain. In the pocket of my jacket, which I'd worn to Narlan's house, there was a small folded piece of paper. I opened it. In handwriting that wasn't mine, in pencil, it said, "Thanks for letting me stay." I showed it to my mom. She didn't know what to make of it. I showed it to Narlan the next week. He went pale. He said his family had moved into that house the year before. The family that lived there before them had a son. He'd gone missing from the backyard when he was 11. They never found him. Narlan didn't know the kid's name. I asked his mom. She didn't know much either, but she'd kept a community newsletter from around the time they'd moved in. There was a small memorial section on the back page, listing a few names. One of them was a boy who disappeared from their street. His name was Marcus. I still have that piece of paper. The handwriting is neat and small like a child's. I keep it in a drawer. I don't look at it often, but I know it's there. Some nights I lie in bed and think about that open sliding door and that shape standing at the tree line. I think about a boy who just wanted to be part of a sleepover one more time, and I think about how I locked him out.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.